Hi, I'm Jason Berquist, and today we are talking about part 2 of 3, how to build up your money status to create the retirement of your dreams. Again, I'm Jason Berquist. I'm the co-founder of retirementofyourdreams.com. Today I want to share with you part 2 of 3, how to build your money status to create the retirement of your dreams. Click here if you haven't seen part 1 yet and go check that out. Specifically, this video is for you if you need clarification and guidance when it comes to understanding your current financial situation. This is a serious problem because you can't plan for retirement when you don't know your current financial situation. I want to start today and empower you to secure the financial stability and independence in retirement with these 3 valuable keys. 1, unlocking the retirement of your dreams, understanding your needs, goals, and dreams. 2, investment clarity, understanding your current investments to realize the retirement of your dreams. And 3, the secret to a secure retirement, guaranteed future income sources. Let me introduce myself if we haven't met. My name, again, is Jason Berquist. I joined this business to help people create the retirement of their dreams. I've been doing this since 2000, so I've seen all sorts of ups and downs in the markets. My whole goal was to help educate people, help them understand how to set up their retirement and figure out their dreams and bring hope back into their lives. I realized this was my calling back in about 2010 when I was going through a divorce. At that time, I was at a financial low and I realized that I wasn't practicing what I preached. So I committed right then and there to practice what I preached. I became an independent financial professional and a certified financial fiduciary. This experience allowed me to do what's always in the best interest of my clients. 1, what I had been teaching, what I had been doing, things that I knew better. I've been teaching these principles for 10 years, and yet during my divorce, I realized I wasn't exactly doing all of those things that I was preaching. So I vowed to make sure that I did those things, not only for myself, but then I further educated myself and added those certifications to make sure that I was always doing what was in your best interest. Now I have a team of experts helping me figure out all of the best options that are out there and empowering you to create the retirement of your dreams. Okay, I'm going to go over again part 2 of 3, how to build up your money status to create the retirement of your dreams. So let's start with part 1, unlocking the retirement of your dreams, understanding your needs, goals, and dreams. So there are 2 aspects to this. Really, it's the why and the how. First, why? Why do we need to discuss the goals as we figure out the details of your retirement? Why do we need to figure out how to get to your goals in the future and what those needs are? My conversation with my clients all the time is talking to them about what will make them happiest in retirement. What do they want in retirement? What does it look like to them? Most of the time, I get blank stares and they kind of look at me and say, I'm not sure. I haven't given it much thought. So we start with this. The most stress for your retirement is, then I tell them to fill in the blanks. Well, in my personal opinion, first off, when you have a guaranteed source of income coming in every month to cover your expenses that are going out, what better way to live a stress-free retirement than to not worry about your bills? Don't you agree? Many people say they live on a fixed income. This is a phrase that we hear a lot in retirement. So if you live on a fixed income, and if you get income that's coming in from a guaranteed source that's going to be around for the rest of your life, and it's covering your basic needs, then the stress of not having to go back to work and the money that's coming in is taking care of your needs, well, that sounds like a stress-free retirement to me. So the first question we always work through is, what are those needs? How much do you need coming in every single month to ensure your bills are covered and you don't have to go back to work? Then we have to establish and know what that is. We want to discuss your goals, your dreams, what you want to do. So I start down this line of questioning. Again, what do you want your retirement years to look like? Again, a lot of blank stares. Now, This retirement looked different for everybody. I get that. It doesn't always mean for everybody that they don't have to go back to work at all. Some people's retirement idea is working part-time. Maybe they are looking at a ways to make money with a hobby or something that they love to do. Like me, I personally love to Jeep. When I think about being retired or not having to go to work, I wouldn't mind making some money off of Jeeping or being able to get parts for free or labor for free or something by having that as a part-time gig or a spare time thing. So everybody's dreams of retirement. Some tell me they literally don't want to work another day in their life, and that's fine too. But I want to go deeper. So we start to talk further like, what's on your bucket list? Well, it seems like most people have travel, vacation, spend time with family on that list. Oh, I want to go even deeper. Where do you want to travel? What places are on your bucket list? And usually when I'm meeting with a husband and wife, a couple, I usually ask this question and the husband tends to point to the wife and say, well, wherever she wants to go, whatever's on her list, that's where we're going to go. But again, I just want to delve in deeper. What do you want to do with your family? Take them on a cruise? Go to Disney World? How often do you want to do it? Do you want to sell your home, buy an RV, travel wherever you want to go, or maybe use that to go to your kids' home, spend as much time as you want with them? So I was working through this with some clients, and it was a funny experience. I was asking those questions, I was coming up with those answers, and the husband looked at me and he said, I want to have enough extra money to go to any movie I want at any time I want on opening nights, buy my drinks, buy my popcorn, and I don't want to have to care about how much the movie costs. Well, we all know that if you go prime time, opening night, you get food and drinks, right? The two of you are going, just a new movie can cost you $75 easy. Well, his wife looked at him and said, I had no idea that's something that you even wanted or cared about. And basically he said, well, I do and think about the cost of that. And so we don't tend to go whenever we want. But we talked about that a bit further. And so I kind of said, hey, if that's a goal, a dream, a want, a hobby, what if we switch that? And what if you figured out a way to maybe own a theater or make money off of those movies or whatever? And then that became a revenue stream rather than just an expense. Anyway, it was a funny time. It was a great story. The process was fun, but back to Pam. When we went through this process, Pam, she really wanted to be able to travel. Now, she was retiring before her husband, so she had all sorts of trips planned for going with her sisters, going with her girlfriends, and so on. We'll get back to her in a minute. Those things shifted as she got into retirement. But if we know your goals, we can determine what that discretionary income allotment is. So we know what extra income we want to have coming in per month that we can save and put aside to go do those things that we have been dreaming about. This is where I also discuss with everybody this just in case retirement. Well, what do I mean by just in case retirement? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's where you don't spend your hard-earned, saved monies just in case you have something that comes up in the future, something that you have to pay for that maybe you weren't thinking about, or saving just in case there's a medical need in the future. So I tell you, don't live the retirement of your dreams with a scarcity mindset. Like we've discussed in previous steps, it's the mindset, right? In order to not live the just in case retirement, we need to have plans for all of these scenarios, all which will be discussed in other steps and other videos. But one of my favorite ways to express this to you is this. You decide to not join the country club, not buy a boat, not travel and see the world, just in case you need that money for something else in the future. Then you pass away and you leave that money to your family. What does your family do with that money? Well, they join the country club, they buy the boat, they see the world, right? All the things you didn't do. Well, I want to talk about how you can spend your money while knowing that those things are secure and you aren't living that just in case retirement. Anyway, back to the point at hand. What extra do you have coming in so that we know what you want and you know too? Retirement is always exciting when we discuss what's going on, what we want to do, what we get to do. Golf, travel, hobbies, extra time, right? So on and so on. We literally are going to make a plan for the 3 stages of retirement. The go-go years, right? Your early years where you're still active and you're out and you're golfing and playing tennis and traveling and going on cruises and whatever the case may be. And then we move to the slow go years where you still want to do all those things, but it's a little bit more passive. Life slows down a little bit. Maybe you're not going quite as extravagant. And then we plan for those no-go years, if you know what I mean. Basically, right, failing health, medical treatments, and nursing care, the defining characteristics of those years. We want to make sure that we have a plan for all three of these stages. So you need to, one, figure out your expenses. You need to know what expenses you have going into retirement. Think through the things that you're currently spending money on. Will they still be there in your retirement years? I just had this conversation with Rick, and when we were talking, Rick said he had all of these things planned out. They were all covered. But I mentioned inflation and dealing with the cost of goods going up in the future. Rick realized that he did not have a plan in place for this, dare I say, this major need in his future. I mean, think about what costs have been and what they are and what they could be. So the action here is delving in deeper. You have to take a close look at what your expenditures are. So if you're not currently using a budget, or what I like to call a spending plan, you need to dial that in and know what your costs will be in retirement so that you're not surprised by the lack of income coming in to cover those goals and dreams. Let's think through it together. Let's go through that. I will help you figure out what it is that you want in retirement. If you want to spend $10,000 a month on traveling, we need to know that goal. We want to consider your bucket list and what your retirement looks like. Okay. On to step 2, investment clarity, understanding your current investments to realize the retirement of your dreams. So next, you want to know what investments you have. So this is where we need to get down to the nitty gritty. We need to review all those files you've just been putting away and not looking at, and go through what you currently have, get your logins, and understand how we access each one of them. On the assessment form, you'll see that we have areas for you to fill all of this out in detail. Also, there are drop downs to help you think of different investments that maybe you haven't looked at in a while, or you're not even sure where they're at, or if they exist anymore. Maybe you just moved something from an old employer and can't figure it out. So we want to sort through all of those things. And you'll see this on the form as you start filling it out. For example, you'll see 401k. That's typically people's number one retirement holding. Once you pick 401k, it will ask you a couple more details. What is your current balance? What is the annual amount that you're contributing to it? So you need to know how much you're contributing, whether per paycheck, month, or what's going in per year. In addition to your contribution, we still want to know things like what's your company match and how does it work? As you go through your investments and work through this process, we'll get into some details to understand if you have the right things in place. For example, I was just meeting with a client yesterday and we were going through this process and I asked a few questions. She'd filled out the form, but we need to know some answers to some follow-ups. Like you, many people don't know those answers, and that's fine. This is typically the scenario we see when we're working together to figure out those details with each one of you. We're here for you. We're here to go through each and every step and hold your hand and help you figure out those things so you know those answers. We'll work through that process together. So back to Pam. We went through this process with Pam. She pulled up her statements online. She could tell us exactly what her balance was, exactly how much was coming out per paycheck. She knew what her match was, but we needed a little bit more clarification. I needed to clarify with her, do you have another version of your 401k? And she was basically like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Well, I was just telling her that in certain entities, different places that you may work, you may have a 401a or a 403b. And or your company may offer you a Roth version of those accounts. In other words, we'll work through each of these steps and go through each of these details with you. But we want to dial in these investments so that it informs us what we need to do to create that retirement of your dreams. Okay, on to step 3. The secret to a secure retirement. Guaranteed future income sources. Now we're going to figure out what amount of guaranteed income is going to be coming in per month for each stage of your retirement and find those shortfalls. Remember, at this stage, you'll have fixed income in retirement, and it's our job to help you secure that and make sure we have those increases where needed so you don't run out of money. so you don't have these shortfalls, so you don't have these surprises in retirement. So making sure you are able to live on whatever money's coming in per month, all of your fixed expenses are covered. That's the first goal. So we're going to look at those guaranteed sources of income or the lack thereof. We'll get back to step 2 and look at your investments, and we'll be able to make those recommendations. Let's say you have your 401k in the market or an IRA or whatever else. Those investments are subject to downturns in the market. Sure, you get the gains too, but now we're more interested in the safety of our monies. So we're not losing just before or just after retirement. We'll discuss this in a lot more detail in step 7 when we go into the retirement red zone. We'll go through all of your accounts to determine which ones will give you a guaranteed source of income in the future, or if we can move them to accounts that will give you a guaranteed income source. There are really only 3 main guaranteed sources of lifetime income, and even those have some caveats. But you'll see on the form that we have a whole section called guaranteed income sources. And what are listed on that section, those 3 things: Social Security, pensions, and annuities. Those are the only 3 that have the potential of giving us a source of guaranteed income for life. Again, some of those have caveats. I know some people's opinions on Social Security and pensions that they may or may not exist in your life, but this is the piece that we'll work through. I know some will throw out real estate into the mix and other investments. We'll go through all of those in detail. We'll discuss each one and make sure that they are ensuring a guaranteed source of income for as long as you live, and that they're covering your needs and your retirement lifestyle, and making sure the proper amount is coming out every single month to cover your expenses, and have that plan in place for inflation that's coming over our lifetime and seeing the cost of goods go up. We'll make sure that you always have the money you need coming in per month to cover your bills, so you never have to worry about going back to work. As we talk with retirees every day, the biggest fear is outliving their money. The process of thinking that they might have to go back to work later in their life if they're starting to run out of money. That's a scary, daunting thought for most. So we're going to make sure you're covered. As we work through the rest of these options, we'll talk about your discretionary funds and what you have for your play money, the ability to do what you want in retirement. As we went through this process with Pam, I've told you a little about her story, and eventually we'll finish her story. But she had one area where she was worried about because she was 55 and wanting to retire early. Now, I think that's early. She thought that was early, and here's why. Her biggest retirement asset was her 401k, a qualified account. Without getting into too much of the nitty-gritty, that meant it hasn't been taxed yet, and there are rules that state if you take those funds out before you're 59 and a half, you're gonna have an additional 10% penalty above and beyond paying taxes. As we worked through this process with Pam, it was eye-opening for her. She knew this. She had done some research before we met, but we told her there was a way to avoid that 10% penalty. And this allowed her to retire right then and there at 55 because we leveraged a legal loophole and were able to avoid that 10% penalty. We put all her different funds into these buckets to give her a guaranteed income source for the rest of her life. No matter how long she planned on living, this income was coming in every single month. And as we went through that process, Pam was in tears. She just started bawling. She didn't believe that it was possible for her to retire right now at 55. And we were able to help her figure that out. And that's not uncommon. There is this phrase that we use all the time in life, right? We don't know what we don't know. Pam knew part of the story, but she didn't know the whole story. And we were able to help her fill in those blanks. Before we went through that information, she thought she couldn't retire until she was 59 and a half, and she would not be able to afford to do that right now, and that she was really down on the fact that she thought she might have to work for another 4.5, 5 years because she didn't think she could replace that income. She needed to replace it immediately in order to be able to retire. But once we showed her that there was a legal way to avoid that 10% penalty, Pam was so excited that she could leave. She didn't have to work until she was 59 and a half. So yeah, she didn't know how to make it happen before she met with us. So the client assessment was life-changing for her. What joy it brought back into her life and how overjoyed we were to be a part of that process. Another piece to know is your Social Security income details. So go visit Social Security online. Go to ssa.gov. Create an account and get your Social Security breakdown. The earliest you can take it is 62, and it will give you a dollar amount for that age. The next part will kind of give you what's called your FRA, your full retirement age, and the dollar amount that you'll get at that point. And the last one you'll see is the dollar amount you'll get at 70. That's the max age in which it won't increase any further from there. So get that information so we can do a Social Security maximizer, figure out your benefits, best utilize this source of guaranteed lifetime income. If you have a pension from wherever you've worked, same thing. It would be best if you went and found out the pension details. It works a lot like Social Security. There could be a lump sum. The company could give you payouts. There's options for either single pay or joint with you and a spouse, or maybe a period certain for a specific number of years. But go find that information out. Then we'll know at least these two possible sources of guaranteed lifetime income. And we'll know precisely how much you have that's guaranteed that's coming in. And then we can add a third piece to the puzzle and fill in those shortfalls. Usually Social Security and pension make up about 60% of the retirement income you're looking for. Maybe only 40% if you only have one or the other. So we have to add a third source, which we'll work on together. So to recap, what we covered in part 2 of 3, how to build your money stash to get to retirement of your dreams includes 1, unlocking the retirement of your dreams, understanding your needs, goals, and dreams. 2, investment clarity, understanding your current investments to realize the retirement of your dreams. And 3, the secret to a secure retirement, guaranteed income sources. So now that you have an understanding of the money status and how it works, I invite you to request a free Retirement of Your Dreams call by clicking here below. Be ready for part 3, which is coming out next week. That'll cover the 3 most significant challenges to completing the Retirement of Your Dreams assessment. In the meantime, watch my free video to discover my 9-step Retirement of Your Dreams blueprint by clicking here. Thank you for considering Retirement of Your Dreams as part of your financial journey. I'm committed to empowering you to achieve the retirement of your dreams. This is Jason Berquist, and I look forward to meeting with you. Have a great day.